Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's election forum for the Colorado State Senate District 3. My name is Steve Henson. I'm the managing editor at the Pueblo Chieftain, which is one of the sponsors of tonight's event, along with Action 22, the 2020 Commission's Governance Task Force, Pueblo Community College's Center for New Media, and the beautiful Memorial Hall. A few words about the format for those of you who haven't been here earlier this evening. Each candidate will have a couple of minutes to introduce himself to you, to tell you or to ask for your vote. And then after that, we'll do a series of questions that have been submitted by readers of the Chieftain. We will not be taking readers or questions from the audience this evening. That's to protect the candidates. Feel free to meet with them and to ask them questions between now and the election. After we go through the questions, each candidate will have an opportunity to summarize their thoughts, and that will conclude our evening. We've had a very, very respectful evening so far, and I thank you for that. And it is a hard thing to run for public office, to put your families through that kind of sacrifice and your individual sacrifice. And it deserves our respect. And so hoop and holler for your candidate and support them. That's great. But let's please show respect for the other candidate as well. Okay, having said that, we tossed a coin, and George won that, and he elected to close the event tonight. So we will have opening remarks from Leroy Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Good evening. I would like to start by thanking the Pueblo Chieftain for holding this event. I would especially like to thank you for joining us. My name is Leroy Garcia, and I'm running to be your next state senator. A fourth generation Southern Coloradan, our family, like many of you, call Pueblo home. My values reflect your values: hardworking, responsible, honest, and one who can always have a positive attitude. Born and raised on Pueblo's east side, my parents worked hard every day to ensure that my brothers and I understood what was important in life. One of those lessons was about service. While my parents never envisioned all of us serving in the United States Marine Corps and could never have dreamed that we would serve in Iraq and Afghanistan, it solidified their teaching that service to a purpose greater than your own is the American way. It is with this same spirit of service that I want to continue to serve you. That's why, as your legislator, I have been committed to working hard on your behalf. And during the past 2 years, I have focused on representing Pueblo by ensuring that we protect the Colorado State Fair and invest in programs like 4-H and FFA, saving the Southwest Chief and working to add a stop right here in Pueblo, bringing a new $11 million CBI crime lab to Pueblo West, the demolition of the old Naval Reserve building, protecting and growing small businesses right here in Southern Colorado. Tonight serves as an opportunity for each of us to share with you our vision and our commitment to this great community. My wife and I are proud to make Pueblo our home. And for this reason, like many of you, we are indebted to making it the very best.
And we'll now have opening remarks from George Rivera.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is so good to see so many people out here in the audience, not just tonight, but in other evenings as well. Committed people, committed voters, people who are interested in the process. I want to thank the Pueblo Chieftain. I want to thank PCC. And I want to thank Club Action 22. I had to turn around there. Action 22 for sponsoring this, and City of Pueblo providing this great facility, Memorial Hall, for these debates. And the reason I'm so glad to see so many in the audience is because, you know, an informed voter is essential to the democratic process. But you know what? Before going too much further, I want to thank my opponent, Representative Leroy Garcia, for his service in the United States Marine Corps. You know, on this, the 13th anniversary of 9/11, it is important to remember that it is because of the men and women in our armed forces that we remain a free nation. and are able to be here to debate in preparation for another free election. Tonight, you'll have an opportunity to listen to a debate over issues of importance, not just to Senate District 3, Pueblo and Pueblo West, but to all of Southern Colorado as well. After a 34-year career serving Pueblo citizens on the Pueblo Police Department, I was called to serve once again, and I was elected in the recall election this last year. And I've served 1 year as your state senator. In that year, I've gotten to learn the ins and outs, the foundation. I've established a foundation on which I can build to go forward. And now at this critical juncture for Pueblo, I welcome the opportunity to state my case for re-election to the state Senate.
Okay, we'll now begin the question and answer session. Leroy, you'll handle the first one. Do you think the current gun control bills have had any effect on crime? And do you think there should be more or fewer laws regarding gun control?
Well, as a U.S. Marine who fought in Iraq in 2003, as a hunter, and as a responsible gun owner, I value and will continue to value and protect the Second Amendment. I voted against the magazine ban, increased fees, and banning concealed carry on campuses. But I believe there's room for common sense in Colorado. That's the Colorado way. So I supported universal background checks because 80% of Coloradans agree with a criminal background check to ensure that convicted felons, domestic abusers, and those who are mentally unstable should not have easy access to firearms. I support law-abiding citizens and preserving their right to bear arms. That's why last year I voted in supporting and making it easier for law-abiding citizens to renew their concealed carry. The key here is making sure that we protect this right and protect the community by those like illegal felons, domestic abusers, and those who are mentally unstable from having firearms.
George?
In the recall election, gun control was absolutely the issue. That's what was the fuse that lit the firework that set off the whole explosion, if you will. And those issues have not changed. My position at the time was those laws were overreach. And that is my position tonight, here in front of you. As to whether those laws have worked, 34 years, again, I spent in law enforcement. I know when people are intent on doing something, they're going to do it regardless of the laws. And I don't care whether it's gun control, I don't care whether it's robbery, I don't care whether it's domestic violence or anything else. Evil people do evil things. And they circumvent the law. And this law, especially the law having to do with universal background checks, which my opponent says he supported in an attempt, what I would call splitting the baby, to vote against the 15-round magazine, but in favor of the background checks. What have they found? They anticipated 140,000 background checks. They budgeted for that and so on. What did they come up with? 2,000 to 3,000? And most of those were actually already pre-accounted for in the gun sales at gun shows. So the main thing which it hampered was a person-to-person sale between private individuals, which has proven to be of pretty much useless value. And you see it in the paper every day. The people are using stolen weapons to commit crimes, and they're using legally bought weapons to do silly things or, well, to harm themselves, just as my opponent says about the those with mental illness. I don't think the laws are working.
Leroy?
Thank you. Well, I will say in 2014, immediately after returning back to the session, I had heard from veterans in southern Colorado, southeastern Colorado, who were worried because military burial teams who were going out and conducting military burials were told that they could be charged with disorderly conduct at a military burial for discharging a firearm. So you know what I did? I have a common sense approach. I introduced House Bill 1059, which was later signed by the governor. Senator Crowder, a Republican from this area, who's our senator, also was the sponsor in the Senate. This is a right that our veterans have earned, and we need to ensure that when veterans are laid to rest, that they have the right to a military burial without the fear of being charged with disorderly conduct.
Well, you know what? I absolutely commend my opponent for doing that, because our veterans do need support. But what does that have to do with whether our gun control laws are working or not? I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Move on to our next question. George, you'll handle it first. What specific bills do you intend to sponsor or co-sponsor?
Well, I already spoke to the background checks. I intend and fully intend to reintroduce a bill to repeal the universal background checks. That's number one. There was also a certain bill that was passed in the previous legislative session, called House Bill 1136, and they called it a Sue Your Employer bill. And last year I attempted to repeal that, because that bill, when it comes into effect in 2015, will not be good for small businesses. I know my opponent has said that his family has owned small business and so on. My wife and I owned a small business. But when a small business owner is liable for punitive damages upon the finding of having dismissed somebody for discrimination, I think that is absolutely horrendous, and it's bad for business. It's bad for small business. When you put small businesses, which they used to have a 50-person threshold, the 50-employee threshold before you were subject to federal guidelines, but that's now been removed. So I don't care if you are a business and you have one employee, and that employee decides to sue you, then you are liable, and could liable for punitive damages. And those punitive damages could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. How crazy is that? Just